I was diagnosed with autism when I was 2, but I didn't find out I was autistic until I was 13. Before I was in elementary school, let's say, I thought my life was pretty normal. I thought everyone went to 2 different preschools. I thought everyone had a variety of college kids take them to the park, to the zoo, to wherever. And I thought everyone went to a place called Esther House, where you spent a lot of time playing dolls and Barbies and creating stories with a 50-something-year-old woman. None of this, I came to realize, is normal for a 4-year-old to experience. By the time I entered elementary school, I began noticing things that were really different. I began noticing that there was an adult in the room that was meant specifically for me rather than the other students. I began realizing the other students didn't really take to me in various ways. Like, I would do weird things that would kind of ostracize me. I realized that there were things that I didn't get, and I would get really upset and have borderline temper tantrums, meltdowns, which should be normal for a 5-year-old or so. But then would have to be taken out of the room by the said adult, and they would have to calm me down and tell me to stop crying and to kind of get over myself. And while I'm sure they used better words and better language, that's how I read it. I read that emotions were not good, that anytime I got upset, it was bad, and that I was different and it was bad. For the longest time, I kept asking my parents, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Later, I found out that the reason why they weren't answering was because my therapist said if you told her, it would really screw with her and it would shoot her self-esteem down, which my mother didn't really agree with, but nonetheless, they did it. I think they felt like they were held in a bind together. 7th grade has to be the worst. People were just brutal. That's when people transition from sort of naive childhood to teenage years, where they become more judgmental and they become sort of a sense of wanting to belong into a group. When people see different, they don't understand different. And more often than not, anytime people don't understand different, they treat different horribly. Kids had figured out that they could rile me up specifically to get me to outburst, and they would take a gross pleasure in that. And some of my teachers didn't really help that notion, because they'd see the kids doing it, they would do nothing to stop the kids doing it, and then hold me back in class during whatever break it is to tell me that I shouldn't let these kids rile me up. And meanwhile, I keep saying, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I figured out that I was going to therapy, and not everyone goes to therapy. After one particular incident in 7th grade, my mom and I were driving home from school, and we pulled up to the house. She stopped the car in front of the house, and she told me I was autistic. We then went inside, where my parents clarified a whole bunch of stuff. Like, when you were 2, you weren't speaking, and you weren't really socializing very well, you weren't developing on this sort of normal path. So after a bunch of family members inquired us to do so, we went to UCLA and had you checked out, and they told us you were basically a high-functioning autistic girl. Then they didn't know at the time, around 1989, 1990, whether or not I was going to lead a full life, whether or not I was going to be able to go to school, whether or not I was going to be able to go to college, live on my own, have a career, anything like that.